What's up, you creepy fucks, and welcome to the Let's Talk Horror Channel podcast, and welcome to the Creep Zone, where we have very honest, in-depth conversations about something from the world of horror. And this episode, as usual, is no exception because we are talking about a super fun movie, an 80s cult classic. Although, I mean, maybe not necessarily at the time, but it has become a massive, sensational cult classic. But still to this day, it's a film filled with absolute nostalgia. It's a film that people and kids can still pick up to this day and enjoy the absolute shit of. Obviously, I'm talking about the Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And with me to talk all about this absolute clownzilla of a movie. That to be honest, already it's luckily I was very, very, very close to dress up as a clown, but I know there's way too many people out there that are terrified by clowns, so I decided not to, just in case. But with me, I have Brandy with me. Hello, Brandy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this for like months. Like we scheduled this like months in advance, and you were like, well, my daughter said we had to talk about Killer Klowns. It's like
that's it. That's what I love. When I have guests on the show, I always want them to sort of decide, or at least send me a big list of films that they want to talk about. And I love it when films. That's it. That you did, absolutely. And I love it when a film pops in those lists that I've always wanted to talk about, and I'm like, oh, okay. Killer Klowns. And as you said rightly, you're like, as soon as I said about what films, and my daughter's just like, well, I mean, now you've got to do Killer Klowns from Outer Space. I was like, okay, well, you win. That's the one. So we're here. So Brandy is also known as the Terrorific Lady, which did I pronounce that right? I don't even know.
You did it. You got it.
The first time ever. But the Terrorific Lady, that's it. Who has so much amazing horror related content on YouTube. You're on all the socials as well. Obviously, you are going to promote absolutely everything that you do at the end of the episode. So everybody, make sure you listen or watch or whatever you're doing right to the end, so you can find out everything. But yeah, thank you so much for being here, and we can have a good old chat about this one.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk about this. It's such a fun movie.
Absolutely, and you've got the T-shirt to go with it. That's nice. And as well as that, behind me, one of these ways, you might see, look at a mug as well. See, this is what's amazing. I feel like the mug, because all I've got is Shorty in the background there, which I stole from my daughter. And that's it. And then look at this. You've got all of them.
Yep.
Look at this.
Shorty and Rudy, I can't point. And then, of course, Cotton Candy, Cocoon.
Yeah, I want one of those so bad. They're so cool. Listen, the UK, we need to get on this. We need a Spirit Halloween or something over here, because it's absolutely fucking killing me that we don't have anything. But yeah, look, let's get into it. Killer Klowns from Outer Space, released in 1988, directed by a name that I'm always going to get wrong because I'm a common little English boy. Stephen Chiodo. He's the guy that directed it, but also he is part of this Chiodo clan. That sounds like really like gangster, so to speak. But
yeah,
but there's loads of them. And it's starring Grant Kramer, Suzanne Snyder, John Vernon, John Allen Nelson, and as usual, there's absolutely loads more people in it. I'm not going to go through them all. That's just a waste of everybody's time. Just Google it, and it's easy that way. And then on IMDb, we're at 6.2% and 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, as we always say, anything above 6% on IMDb is essentially an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
That's it. So, on Google synopsis wise, we have when aliens. Also, we know that these are going to be shit, so it's worth reading them. But when aliens who look like clowns come to a small town and start killing people, a group of youngsters band together to fight them and save everyone. That's it's as shit as they normally are. It doesn't really give anything. I mean, the thing with Google Synopsis is that it doesn't really tell you how much. I mean, it's difficult to, but it doesn't really tell you how much fun this movie is. So they need to up their game a little bit, but it's Google. So the first question that I always ask any of my guests is, if you can remember, when did you first see Killer Klowns from Outer Space?
Well, I actually can't remember because I watched it as an adult. It wasn't my gateway horror like a lot of people. Like, I know they've mentioned, oh, I watched Killer Clowns when I was a kid. Nope. I watched it when I was a little bit older. I'd always heard kind of like how ridiculous this movie was. It's like, well, I gotta give it a try. I love ridiculous like horror movies, and that was about maybe 2-3 years ago, if I want to say. And when I watched it, I just immediately fell in love with it. It's like, wow, where has this been all my life?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I love that you said that, because it is one of those movies that's like an instant, like you either get it or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's one of those movies that you instantly fall in love with. And like yourself and like me, you just want everything that you can get about it. Mm-hmm. And there's something like really funny, because there's something so cute about these things that are so fucking freaky and sinister looking that it's absolutely mental. So I know I was quite similar as well, but not. I wasn't in adult, but this wasn't. I mean, I started my journey through horror like probably like yourself, but very, very young, like so many people.
Yes.
So, but yes. I remember. So this is a film that me and a friend watched, where he rented it, or he got his mum to rent it, and it was obviously back when we had VHS tapes. The best time in life.
Yes.
And we rented it. And I just remember it was one of those moments where you always remember it, and you can almost like feel it, and I always remember we were sitting in front of the TV on the carpet, just watching this movie and just enjoying it, and then thinking like how mental it is, and then like how dark it gets, and you're like, this is like disguised as a kids movie and is a kids movie, but yet there's so many like fucked up bits. And because I was probably about 11, 12, 13 at most when I watched it, I was old enough to get those darker bits where I was just like, okay, I mean, that's not quite like a kid's movie. But obviously we're going to get into that completely. But as Google said, basically, there's aliens that come down that look like clowns and they start killing people, but it doesn't really tell you how. So obviously the start of the movie, yeah, they do come down. They end up basically killing some guy and his poor dog. Once again, we get another movie where a dog dies.
Stop killing dogs in horror movies.
Stop killing dogs. I know. They got to stop it. But it never will stop, because everybody knows that it's like, if you kill a dog, people will talk about the movie. And that's how it works. Yeah, it's so sad. So then... we basically are introduced to sort of at least two of the main characters, which I really love, because I don't know. Look, you're a lot cleverer than me. Everybody's cleverer than me, but I always think if I figure something out, I'm well clever. But the characters we're introduced to, I can't remember their names. You might. But basically, the guy and the girl, the romantic couple of the movie. Their roles in regards to characters are switched. So, like, normally, unfortunately, we have the woman who's the blonde who would normally be doing, what they normally do in the representation of ladies in 80s cinema. And then we have the guy, but the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
So the guy is, for not having a better word for it, but the bimbo, so to speak. He's the guy that's like, doesn't really fucking get it. And she's like, well, let's not do this and let's not do that. Like, she's the one that's actually thinking ahead, and he's just like, I'm just going to press every fucking button I want and kill everyone.
Yeah. Boop, 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 and I'm going to walk into that spaceship and...
Yeah, like, let's go in this door. Let's go in this door. Oh, we've just uncovered the fact that it is an alien spaceship, where we've got fucking people that are all like in candy floss, which is such a cool. I mean, I love the idea of that, and it's such a cool idea, as I said, and visually it looks really cool. But also, you're like, yeah, it's still fucked up. It's those dark little elements that it throws in there, and that's pretty much what starts the movie off, and the movie rolling. We start that. They go to the sheriff's department, where obviously you've got one of the cops who's the most miserable bastard that's ever existed and don't believe anything. You've got then also the other cop who's by the book, and you've got to do it by the book. And obviously he's the nice one. and then the film essentially just becomes about different scenes where they're essentially trying to sort all this shit out while the clowns are going around causing absolute mayhem. And that's like, if that doesn't make you want to watch a movie, what does?
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird looking clowns who just walk into this town and start killing people. I mean, if you're scared of clowns, you might not want to watch it. I would probably
No, absolutely. Yeah, like this is like anybody. I can't remember that there's an actual term for people that are have a phobia of clowns. I just can't. Clown phobia. I don't know. Probably.
I think it's like chlorophobia or something like that.
Maybe something like that. Yeah, but there is one. But I'm not clever enough to know it. But this film is one of those films that people who don't like clowns will definitely want to stay away from this movie. But this is so where to start? Do you know what? Let's start with the Killer Klowns themselves, because they are such a huge part of the movie. And what I love is that they all have names. Not that I can remember a lot of them. Obviously, we've got Shorty, we've got Bilbo, we've got Slim, we got Spiky, we got Fatso, we got Clownzilla.
There's
Rudy.
Yeah, Rudy.
Yeah. And then some others. I mean, there's loads of them.
Yeah, those are the main ones. I find it kind of funny. They have all these clowns with it's like Shorty and Spiky, then just Rudy, which is like the most like human name.
Yeah, they were like, I don't know what to do, and they're like, oh, what's that assistant's name over there? Rudy. Oh yeah, we call him Rudy. That's it. But yeah, there's so many of them, and this is why I think it's a cool place to start, because I think this will probably take up quite a lot of the episode itself. Obviously, we get into the movie and how we feel about it, but they're so cool and they're so well designed, even for today. And even though like the costumes sometimes themselves, I'm really talking about the facial features of these clowns. Because they all have their own character. They all look different. They all feel like they move different facially. But there is something so terrifying about these clowns still, because they've got these proper like sharp teeth, and they've got, and they go from like trying to be really like innocent to like, there's a moment, and I can't remember who it is, whether it's Fatso or Jumbo or one of them, where his face is all like sort of normal, and then his face just switches to like being evil. And
yeah, I think it's when he was at that restaurant trying to beckon the kid like to come out, and whoever's
I think that's it. Yeah. You're right. Because and once again, like that's what I'm talking about. This movie is it constantly is bordering this line of like child friendly movie that any kid can watch. But then when you're watching it as like a teen or an adult, then you're watching it and go, well, that's actually like pretty like dark and messed up. Like he's trying to call this kid over, and then the look of this clown's face. But the way that the faces are done in this movie, like it's such a testament to the abilities of practical effects. That this is one of them, a very, very low budget movie where you put the money in the right places. And obviously in this, they put, the money into, some of the money into the masks, and the way that they are in the costumes. But I just love how the masks or the costumes that they are, the way that they switch from being nice or trying to be like lure people in by doing nice and being like an actual clown to going incredibly sinister and terrifying with like in an instant, is almost like replicating the film itself. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I also have to point out just the fact that how they were able to even emote through the mask. Like you mentioned, that one clown just really happy to really evil. It's like, it's got to be really hard to like build something like that to be able to emote so well through it. So a testament to the practical effects too in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Like, yeah, there's, we've seen so many movies where things just look like masks put on top of somebody's face. But yeah, you're right. To emote, any form of emotion through it, whether it's the performances that are doing it or whether it's the practical effects themselves, it's always a joy when you get to watch stuff and Like, this is one of those movies where we get this. I mean, to me, like, we get this so often in horror more than any other genre, is when you sit there and you're like, that's cool. You know, like because you're always in awe of the craftsmanship, not just, you know, about the movie itself and how, like, the performances might be great and the score might be great, which we're getting to as well. You know, and the story and the structure and the filmmaking might be great, but then we get little things like, you know, the practical effects that, you know, make us feel so nostalgic about the films that we used to watch when we were younger. And you know, that's always a nice feeling. But even to this day, you can watch a film 100 times, like Killer Klowns from Outer Space, and then sit there and go, how cool is it? Like, that they, like, how cool do they look at, you know, and you fully understand, like you were saying, the emotion of what they are, for whether they're supposed to be, you know, I'm a clown doing stupid funny things, or I'm going to pull off this incredibly terrifying face where I'm angry and my disgustingly sharp teeth that are going to munch your face off, you know, like a modern day Pennywise. You know, it's pretty terrifying. So yeah, you're right. They did such a great job, and I love the fact that there's so many. I mean, I'd have to ask, do you have a favourite one?
Oh boy, like, well, the ones that out of the ones that I have, it would probably, I don't know. I tend to like Rudy like a lot. Probably
Rudy's pretty cool.
Because he's tall, goofy, kind of looking, and kind of gangly, you know, just like I am. So.
I think, like, because I always look at, like, all my Funko Pop things that I've got behind me somewhere over here, which annoyingly I need to put in a different place so people can see them. But I think the more I look at it, I don't know, I tend to lean towards Fatso, because there's just something about, and it leads into, like, the emoting the emotion, or emoting the what is going on. I think, like, because his face is so big, that it manages to, like, have so much expression. That's the word I'm looking for. The different types of expressions really show on, like, Fatso's face, and Jumbo, of course. I think I missed Jumbo earlier, but I mean, he has a big part in this movie, Jumbo, which we talk about a bit as well. But, you know, yeah, like I said, like, the clowns themselves, like, they are what help a movie like this create what it is, and helps it create, you know, the joy that we had from when we were kids, but also helps create the lasting legacy of it and the cult status that it's now become. That's what, you know, that's what's branded it, you know, like the Killer Klowns themselves. You know, it was such a good idea to create something using that sort of those sort of characters.
Yeah, I think the movie wouldn't have worked otherwise, and I think that clowns are a huge part of the reason why this film is now a cult classic, and why there's so much merch out with it. Because, like I said, there's like t-shirts, mugs, toys, Funko Pops. There's even a video game that came out recently.
Yeah, that's it. I know they've just quite recently released a video game as well, and it's, what's absolutely mad is that still we don't have, like, a sequel. So we've got all of this stuff, but yet we are still living off, and, you know, like, obviously the marketing, promotion, money is still coming in off that thing, and I think it's great. I think it's funny, isn't it? Because I say this quite a bit, but horror fans are so good. Like, the horror community is so incredible. And the reason it is, and this is another example of it, is that so often outside of the horror genre, you know, like, you take, like, say, like, Marvel stuff or something like that, you know, like, there is so much of that sort of stuff about that people will get sick of it. And so many franchises and so many movies and so much music and all that sort of stuff where they make so much of it, it's shoved in your face, and you're like, I don't want any more of this. They need to stop doing it. But when it comes to horror and horror fans and this amazing horror community, we literally cannot get enough of it. So when it comes to, like, Killer Klowns from Outer Space, so many people could easily look at that and go, it's just selling out. You know, like, it's not making any movies. It's not producing anything new in regards to material like that. It's just living off the IP, living off the name of Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And you could so easily go, they're just making money and they're just selling out. But the horror community doesn't literally give a fuck about that. Because we literally sit here and we're like, I'm so envious of the stuff that you've got. And I want as much, and I want these fucking popcorn gun things and all this sort of shit.
Yes.
I cannot get enough of horror, and I can't get enough of the stuff that's out there, the products that are out there that horror puts out. That in 20 years we could still be churning out Killer Klowns from Outer Space stuff and have no movie, but I will still be happy because we have Killer Klowns from Outer Space stuff.
Yeah, like I wish there was a sequel, but I think like it's mired up in just like rights, like some kind of like rights that's preventing it from being made. Like not for lack of trying. I mean, they've tried, but But if we never get a sequel, I'll be very sad. But then also, like you mentioned, like happy at the same time. It's like, well, at least we have Killer Klowns.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. It's a tough one because it's sort of like, obviously it's a completely different film, but it's a bit like Gremlins in a way. We got the first one, we got the second one, but anybody that loves Gremlins, you always want them to finish the trilogy. You want them to bring back Zach Gallihan and Phoebe Cates, and you want the whole band to get back together and finish off that trilogy. And there's talk, and there's talk, and there's talk about it, but nothing ever happens. And then there was that horrible talk that they were going to make it, but it's all going to be CGI, and you're like, you can't make Gremlins CGI. Like, literally a film to this day that I'm in absolute, like, my jaw drops every time I watch it because I'm like, how fucking cool are they? Like, the fact that they're real, they're there on screen, you feel it, you see it, the interaction. And that's what it's like with Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And you're like, interpreting that now, obviously it's only been one movie, but where does it go now? And if you don't have, the same people behind it
right
now, you're like, okay, it's probably not going to be the same and it's not going to feel the same. So part of you's like, oh yeah, I'd love to have a Killer Klowns from Outer Space sequel. And then the other side of you's like, yeah, but do you? Because if it's rubbish, then it's, always, or, a little bit of a tarnish on the legacy. But then you always just go back to the first one. So they might as well have not made it. So, this is the problem with movies.
Yeah, only if the Chiodo brothers are involved with the
sequel.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, they've got to be, like, because now they could have like a bit of a bigger budget to do more with the clowns, and that would just be really cool to see.
Yeah, it's mad. As I said earlier, it's mad to think that we've got so much merchandise. Like Ghostbusters, you sort of get it. That's a continuous franchise that was so big at the time and continues to be massive. That you sort of get. But the fact that it's still living and making money off the single movie that it is a testament to the Chiodo brothers and a testament to everybody that worked on the film, because they made something that is not only such a fun, fantastic watch, but it lives on and still continues to make money, where people are still like us, where we're like, just make another one and make us happy.
Please.
please, that's it. But yeah, I mean, look, that's the clowns themselves. But when you start talking about the clowns, then you're like, okay, well, like, then you're not necessarily talking about the movie itself. And maybe, like, the movie itself isn't very good because the clowns is what saves it. But that's, like, not the case whatsoever. This movie is just full and jam-packed, like, from, like, start to finish of just fun. It's just such a fun movie.
Yeah, this movie is not going to win any Oscars. It's not going to be nominated for any Academy Awards. It doesn't have an overly convoluted plot. Clowns land, kill people. You don't need an overly complicated plot for something like this.
No, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't need an overly... And I think and what I love about it is that when you watch the movie, especially the older you get, the more you realise that they know that. Like, it's not taking itself seriously. Because we get that so often, especially in horror. You can make films about clowns, or you can make films about Winnie the Pooh, and it's so serious, and there's nothing fun about it. They take themselves so seriously, and horror is definitely in a place where it does take itself very seriously. I mean, obviously the 80s was all fueled by parties and cocaine, and that's why it was fun. But but movies were so fun, and I think that's why like the genre was such a success within the 80s. And then obviously once we started getting to the 90s and so on, obviously everything changed. It started becoming more serious. But it's cool with a film like Killer Klowns from Outer Space, because when you're watching it, you know that, yeah, making the film itself is serious, and they took that seriously. But what you see on screen is a proper depiction of what they were just trying to make. They were like, we haven't got billions and millions of money, we've got a low budget, but we just want to try and have fun with it, make some great effects, and have a story that goes from start to finish. Like you say, the acting in it isn't great. It's not going to win any Oscars, but it's good for what it is, and that's what matters, right?
Exactly. And I do like the shift that horror has taken, like going back to the more fun stuff, especially like from the 2010s and on, like with the horror comedies, like well, if we're going back also, like maybe even the mid 2000s too. So things like, you know, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Shaun of the Dead is another one that I really love, and then also movies like Terrifier also are a throwback to just like those kind of fun 80s like movies.
Yeah, absolutely. The genre, as we know, like throughout horror and throughout the history, we you know, we speak about it all the time, but it just has this constant tonal shifts. Something, you know, horror goes into a rut. It brings out the same shit. People get bored of it, and then they look for the next thing. They find that next thing, and then their next thing, they're like, right, now let's keep doing that same thing, and so on. So horror, that's what's going to happen with horror, and it's going to be a constant repetition. But in between the lines of horror, then that's where you always like looking. Like if you love horror, that's where you like looking, because in between those lines of the same shit that's coming out, that's where you get the cult, like classic movies, you know, like movies like When Evil Lurks and stuff like that, where it's a phenomenal movie that not a lot of people out there talk about, and you're like, but if you love horror, that's a movie that's an essential, you know, like The Void, for example, another movie, like a modern, that to me is a modern horror masterpiece that not many people talk about, and I seem to talk about on every fucking episode. I can't help myself. But it, you know, this is what horror does. But in the 80s, especially like this in the 80s, I mean, this was 88, so it was on the tail end of 80s. It was all about fun. It was all about any idea is a good idea, and that's what I loved about it. So they were like, what can we do? Let's just make a movie about clowns that come to Earth, alien clowns come to Earth and kill people in insane ways. And that they do. They got some pretty mad ways that they kill people. So you've got how we got, so they kill a dog, the poor little dog. You've got Shorty ends up literally knocking somebody's block off.
Yes.
With his boxing gloves. There's one that I'm not going to talk about just yet because it's my favourite. But we've got the one where they turn up to the door, where they say, I think it's one of them. I would probably say it's them. So they speak in it because there's a bit later on within the movie where, and they keep on doing it, where they can replicate voices. So that I don't technically class them as speaking. So I think the only word that they actually say with their own voice is pizza. I'm pretty sure that that's it. He just comes to the door and he's like, pizza. And, and I'm pretty sure like that's it. But obviously they come to the door. They've got pizza, but then obviously I can't remember who comes out the pizza. Probably Shorty, I don't know, Shorty, with a ray gun or whatever. Kill someone there, and then you've got they try and attack somebody in the world's longest shower. I'm pretty sure that shower is at least 20 minutes long. And these little popcorn turn into like baby killer clown things with long necks and try and kill her. What else? Who else? I mean, and basically everybody gets turned into like these candy floss things. Who else? There's got to be some other big deaths in there, apart from the one that I'm thinking about, because I don't want to get there yet. What other ones are there?
Well, there's the also the puppet show is one. I remember that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's that puppet show, and there's another puppet show that I'll talk about later, which is the main one, because that is insane, that scene, and that's one of the scenes that I'll talk about a little bit later on.
And then the security guard with the pies is another one.
Of course, and once again, it's a discussion that can be had once again about the practical effects and how they are so spot on and they are so 80s in this, because once again, like, even the practical effects are fun. And yeah, the fact that this guy gets pied to death and gets melted by pies, and he's a fucking gloopy mess. And like, we so much in the 80s when we had like street trash and stuff like that, and everything had to be gloopy,
Yeah.
and everybody had to fucking melt. Um, but yeah, well remembered. But that's a great scene where the security guard gets pied as well, which also I never really get the ending as well, because obviously they get like pies dropped on them at the end of the movie, and then they don't melt, but it cuts. So like, is it one of those things where, like, as the viewer, you're supposed to think afterwards that they melted and died? Um, it's a bit like Black Christmas, where at the end of it, the phone rings and the guy's in the house, and you're like, oh shit, everybody's dead then. But then it cuts, and then you're like, oh, that's where the film goes, and then you're like, oh shit, everybody's gonna die, and then so it's a bit like that, but with pies.
I see it probably just having main character like protection, like plot armor. Like they don't know because they're the main characters. So
yeah, exactly. They got some sort of what they didn't tell us is they designed some sort of pie in a deleted scene. They designed some sort of pie shield that would made them immune to these acid pies. But once again, like I was saying earlier, is that it's not just about the clowns, it's about the imagination in this movie. And this film is like brimmed like to the absolute top, whatever you could fucking think of absolute incredible, intuitive and imaginative ideas. The clowns themselves, the guns that they use, the way that they're coming down from space, and the way that they are fooling us, the way that they're lying to us as to what they are. They're like, well, if we become clowns, this is going to be easy for us to do. And the inventiveness of the ways that they are killing people, like with the pies and the puppets and shortly knocking somebody's head off. And even little things as well. Like, I love picking up on the little things, because the more you watch it, and then you start picking up on them. So like the bit where they go off into the woods and they've got a balloon dog, but the balloon dog is barking.
Yes.
And it's so cute, but so cool, because you're like, people don't, you like, so much gets overlooked with movies like this. And then, like I said, the more you watch them, then the more you're like, oh, that's cool. Like the shadow puppets. That's such a cool idea. On the wall where he's doing all the different puppets, and he's like amazing everybody, but then turns into like a dinosaur thing or whatever, or a monster, and then eats people. Once again, it's the imaginative like ideas where they're like, let's just go with it, let's try it and see what happens. Obviously, the fact that they can mimic voices is cool, but it's also terrifying, because it means, they can just do what they want. They can get in anywhere, like they do in the movie. They replicate a voice, and then they're in your house. So it's there's so much to love about this movie. There's also, like, obviously for a low budget movie as well, you've got some chase scenes in it as well, in a car, which is one of the clowns is on the side of the car, which looks all right. Yes, you can see what they're sitting on most of the time. You can see what they're sitting on, but you can't win them all. And also, there's a lot of things that really show the budget in this movie as well. So, like the low budget. So I don't know if you noticed, but I'm sure you did, how they went all out for like clowns and stuff like that, but they couldn't afford to make decent signs. So like the sign for them, there's like a sign for Crescent Cove, and it says "Welcome to Crescent Cove," and it's literally just a painted on sign that says it. And the police station, which is quite clearly not even a police station, it looks like some sort of office building, literally has like a sign saying like Crescent Cove Police Station, and it looks awful. And then you get little things like that show like the low budgetness of this movie. I'm trying to think what else there is. Bloody hell, there's the candy cocoons, baby popcorn, clown things. Yeah, obviously they come out. yeah. Also, I did realise as well that one of the main leads, I remembered his name, Dave, who's like the cop, the good cop. Dave is like a really bad name for movies. Like, it's not a good name for like a hero. Dave, it doesn't work.
Yeah, or Chad. Don't be named Chad.
Yeah,
You're be a
no
hero.
one likes a Chad. No one likes a Chad. It's almost as bad as Brett, but no one likes a Chad. But yeah, Dave doesn't work. It's not like not a strong name for. I mean, over here in the UK, most people that are called Dave are like always portrayed to be the absolute dumbest people in TV programs and that. So uh, they should have got a stronger name rather than Dave. But look, yeah, there's so much joy, so much love to have with this movie. And there's so much that, as I said, as an adult, you think about and you think more about. And one of the cool aspects of it is, like I mentioned earlier on, is how dark this movie can get, and you get some really dark scenes in this movie, and the older I get, the more those scenes stand out. And that's what's really cool about this movie, is that you always pick up on things when as you get older, and then you're like, yeah, like this is messed up if kids watch this, and then you're like, but then they've got to.
Yeah, it's just like you think about probably some of the horror movies that you were watching, even younger than teenage. Just like, wow, I should not have been watching that.
Yeah. Like, it's quite funny how you think like back to all the movies that like you watch when you're younger and stuff, and then this is one of those movies still that sticks out where you're like, yeah, I don't know if this is right for kids to watch at some point. But then, like, as I said, like, you can't deny it. As I said at the start, it's like a kids' family movie disguised that's horror adjacent with these absolutely terrifying killer clowns. And that's why I think it has had this lasting legacy, not just because of the characters themselves, but of the fact that, like, you can still, as an adult, sit there and yes, you get taken back to when you were a kid and when you watched it or whenever, but you still, as an adult, can sit there and enjoy it because it has those darker elements that you sit there and you're laughing because you're like, yeah, the kids don't fucking get this bit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wish I could have had the experience of watching it as a kid, but I didn't. But better late than never, as I always
But you've
say.
got it now, and that's all that matters. That's
Yes.
It's better to have it now than never.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. One of the things, obviously, we haven't really spoken about is the music in this, because the music in this is mental. Obviously, we've got the absolutely amazing Killer Klowns theme, which I have on in the car way more than I should do, um, which is great, and everybody just probably thinks I'm an absolute mental as they go by. Because you can't play it like quietly. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of it. But then they're just like, why is he listening to fucking clown music in his car? But how do they know what my day job is? But yeah, the music. But what I love about the music, once again, there's always these themes in movies that pop up, and I never actually know whether they're meant to be that way or whether it's just coincidence. And like I said earlier, like, the film takes on these quick turns from being family friendly to being really dark. And then the clowns themselves have that represented in their character, where they're going from playful to very, very sinister. And that sort of happens with the music in the movie as well, where sometimes you've got this sort of classic clown sort of esque music that you would get at the circus and so on. But then you have moments where there's a scenes where there's no music and it adds that sort of tension or dread, or it starts going into the music where the territory of like a softer score or more of a tension driven score. Mm-hmm. Once again, it is a movie that is very well made, that I think once again is overlooked. Like this happens quite a lot when I talk about films. Is I overanalyze movies. That's just the way that my brain works. And and by doing that, I mean, even I even find good in films like Chud. Like. and I think by overanalyzing movies, sometimes you pick out these little things, like, as I said, and you're like, is this a coincidence or is this clever filmmaking? But irrelevant of those sort of things, like with a film like this, um, it is so well crafted that we're in a genre where, I mean, you literally just have to go on Tubi and there is probably 80% absolute shit. And then you get 20% classics or like modern films that are actually very good. But the genre is so full of movies that aren't made well and are very rubbish. But then you can even go back to the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and so on, where you do have films like this that could so easily be just shit and just trash. But they're so well crafted in different aspects. And I think a lot to do with this movie, and I think a lot of its success comes down to the imagination of this movie and the imagination of the Chioda brothers and everything that they put into it, where they were like, we know what this is, we're going to make it what it is, and we're going to have fun with it. And because they did that, it shows on the screen, and that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are most definitely people out there that are going to be like, watch this and be like, well, I don't get it. I think it sucks. My advice for any movie where you have just that initial reaction to it is like, well, give it another try, watch it again, and if you still don't like it, well then at least you tried. Not every horror movie is going to be for everybody, and that's perfectly okay because there's plenty out there for all of us.
Absolutely. There is always, and I say this all the time, there are always going to be movies that I watch that I cannot stand, but yet they're going to be somebody's favorite horror movie.
Yes.
And that's just the way it works. And you're exactly right. What's great is that within this incredible community, it doesn't matter because we're also supportive of each other and everybody's, I have said I don't find films very often that bad that I want to talk about how bad they are. And sometimes they are. But even when I find a film like that, it's just a conversation that you have. It never becomes anything more than that. It just becomes a conversation where you learn from someone else or they learn from you. You have different insights to different things. You see things that they don't. They see things that you don't. It's such an incredible collective community of this amazing horror community that a film like this, like you were saying, is a prime example where people can grow up on this film and you absolutely love it, and then you can watch it as an adult and you still absolutely love it. But people now, like if you're kids, I think you're still going to absolutely love this. But if you're, say, maybe someone that is used to, say, modern day horrors that didn't have these sort of effects and this sort of cheesy elements to it, it might not be for you, but it might be. And that's the thing with horror, is that you just have to take a chance on it because you never know, because it might end up being your favorite like horror movie that you've ever seen. And then that's the thing with horror, is that it can appeal to everyone, but anyone in different ways. And that's what's amazing about it. And this is, like you said as well, this is like a good example of that.
Yes. I also remember a quote from Tom Atkins. It was in the In Search of Darkness documentary. He said, "No one sets out to make a bad horror movie." It's like, you know what? And that's how I've been trying to approach just watching horror movies, just like with the more just kind of insightful, be like, you know what? I'm just going to go into it and give it a chance. And it's not my cup of tea. It's perfectly fine. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say on this, they made a movie. Like that's the number one thing. No matter what, out of anything, it could be the worst film you've ever seen. It could be Malignant, but they made a movie. But they made a movie, and irrelevant of whether you like it or not, they did, and that is what the number one main accomplishment out of everything is, getting a movie made. And if you do that, well, you've already won something in life, because it's such a difficult industry to do. But if you do it and you do it right and it has success and it becomes a film from 1988 that is still banging out merchandise to everyone, to the masses in Spirit Halloween and everywhere that it can, and people are still loving it and want to be a huge part of that success, that's when you know that you've got something and you've done something right. So it's such a great, incredible credit to the Chiodo brothers for creating an imagination like this, having an imagination like this to create a movie that's lasted like this. And I can't help but smile when I think about it, because I'm just like, you think back on all the scenes and then you're like, it's so much fun. And sometimes, we watch all these incredibly dark horror movies and you have to just have fun with it sometimes. And this is one of those movies where you can just sit there and just enjoy and put it on and enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. So I've got some production info and some facts as well. Not many, so we're all right. The popcorn gun used by one of the clowns in the movie, which included a compressor that would allow the weapon to actually propel popcorn, was the most expensive prop made for the production, costing $7,000 to create. So they spent $7,000 on making the popcorn gun thing. So
wow,
that's a lot. That's a lot of money on a popcorn gun.
Yeah.
So I mean, it worked, because I mean they've definitely made more than $7,000 back on it.
Yeah.
They
definitely got their money back.
Yeah, absolutely. While the Chiodo brothers were well known as special effects artists, hence why everything looks so incredible, much of the special effects work was carried out by other artists, allowing the brothers to focus more on their production duties. However, the brothers did personally construct the miniature set for the Clownzilla sequence. So they had their hand in it, but obviously it's not, that easy going, we make practical effects, but we've also got to make an entire movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, they sort of handed a lot of that off. But look, I mean, what does that matter when it turns out like this?
Yeah, still looks good.
Absolutely. In the film's original finale, Dave, as I've already mentioned, I hate that name in this movie. Dave was killed in the destruction of the clown's ship. But this was changed after audiences in test screenings deserved a more upbeat ending, which happens, obviously, as we know, quite a lot within cinema and so on. People do love a happy ending, as they say. So that's why they were like, "No, Dave, you can live."
Yay, Dave!
Yay, Dave! That's it. And then the last one that I've got is the Clownzilla's theme. Was originally written for Jason Voorhees. The producers of Jason Lives rejected the music Mazzari sent them for the trailer, but Mazzari saved the music he'd written and used it for the Clownzilla entrance music instead. So the scene where we were introduced to Jojo the Clownzilla, or whatever his bloody name is, he comes down, and that could have been music for Jason Voorhees. But I'm happy that the Clownzilla got it.
Yeah, I don't think that really fit with Jason. So yeah, I'm glad that he saved it and didn't just completely just scrap it.
Or I'd love them to do a new alternate version of Jason Lives where they just put the entire Killer Klown soundtrack with that movie, and just have Jason killing people with. I mean, that would be pretty cool, to be fair. Somebody needs to do that. Just have a clown circus soundtrack with a really serious horror movie. That's the next thing. That's the next big thing.
Do it, somebody.
Yeah, that's it. Somebody's got to. So that's it. That's some production facts about the movie. Some little facts and info. I like shoving those in because I like learning them, and hopefully other people out there like finding them out. Overall thoughts on the movie. So this is just a little bit about your overall. Well, it doesn't have to be a little bit. You can go on for as long as you want as your overall thoughts on the movie.
Well, my overall thoughts. Well, first when I saw it, I actually had to see it twice. My first viewing of it was just like, what in the world am I seeing? This is so ridiculous. Clowns killing people with ray guns and popcorn guns, and they're making them into cotton candy, and they're eating them. It's just what am I seeing? So yeah, it's just then I was like, well, okay, I'm going to give it another shot, because side story. That's how I felt about Prince of Darkness, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, when I first watched. Like, this is ridiculous. But now going back to Killer Klowns, I watched it the second time. I was like, this is just so goofy and just ridiculously fun, and I really enjoy watching it. And I just love the clowns were actually kind of cute at times, so I felt a little bit conflicted. Just like, well, they're cute sometimes, especially with the scene in the store when they're looking at everything and just like exploring everything, spraying shaving cream in like the face and sneezing with the powder. But then they're so evil. It's just like, so you don't know how to feel about them at times. But in my long kind of rambling like thing, I'll kind of bring it around to the point where it's just like my overall thoughts is just a popcorn movie, pun intended, but a fun one.
Nice.
Like, I watch it whenever I want to cheer myself up.
Yeah, you're right. It is that, and it's really well. You nailed so much on the head there. Like, this film is great because it's goofy, and what I love about that is that so many times can be such a put off of movies where you're like, no, it was just stupid, and goofy, and it was just, and it doesn't make sense, and all that sort of stuff. And we can always find ways of not liking these types of movies, but that helps this movie because it adds to it. Because, like I said, like, they knew what they were making, so they made it what it was, and they leaned into that. And you're right, like, it's such a testament to them because the clowns themselves are actually really cute. You're right. But also, they're murderous bastards that are going around, like, killing people and knocking their heads off and putting them into, candy floss things and drinking their blood and all that sort of stuff. It's dark when you think about it, but it never comes off as goofy in regards to, like, that's stupid. It's goofy and it's fun, and that's what this film is. It is 100% fun, and you're absolutely right. Like, this is a movie that you're like, if you're down in the dumps, if you want to get nostalgic, like for myself, like, obviously it's a little bit different because you saw it a little bit later on, but obviously, in 20 years this will be one of those nostalgic movies for you. But for me, like, every time I watch this, I get taken back to sitting on a carpet with my friend, putting in the VHS, and I can still think of everything, the carpet, the TV, and then putting this on, and then fully engrossed in it, and sitting there eating blockbuster popcorn, and, it takes you back. And that's what I love. That's what horror does. That's what horror does from the 70s and the 80s. It's like a comfort, it's like having a comfort blanket. And that's what these sort of movies are like. And I think that's one of the big reasons why horror is such a success, is because it's not something that should make you feel good, but it does. Because the depictions, obviously this film is a little bit different, but so much of horror, like I've said before, is shrouded in darkness. But yet we take the light from the darkness because we end up enjoying it. And it doesn't mean that we're all fucked up in the head. And we like watching, like, clowns, like, lure little kids to go and kill them. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is that we enjoy how the overall movie makes us feel, because there's elements like this movie. The practical effects are timeless in this. No matter how some of it might not look great, but at the same time, because it doesn't look great, it makes it even more charming. And that's the thing. Like, this film has charm, it has incredible practical effects, it has the nostalgia, it has the imagination and the inventiveness that, like I've said a million times, has lasted since 98 and then will continue to keep going. And this is a film that now I've been able to pass down to my daughter, and so many other people out there have passed down to their kids. And I know that this will be a movie that she will do that with her kids, and it will keep going. And this is a film that will have the legs throughout existence, and it deserves to, because it is what it is, and it's unapologetic in the way that it does it and what it is. And like you said, it's goofy, but it's goofy in all of the best possible ways, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And they could have made it today. Like, this movie could have come out in 2024, And I think it would have still worked because nostalgia is coming back, trending back around. People are looking back towards like the 80s and 90s and even just like 2000s. Makes me feel old, but
Oh, I know. It's mad, isn't it? I hate thinking that like films like the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and House of Wax and things like that, when we had that boom of remake after remake, and as good or bad as it was, I still think it was like a couple of years ago. And then and then I'm like, oh shit, no, that's like 20 years ago now.
yeah,
And I hate it. It's a horrible, horrible feeling. To everybody out there, don't get old. Oh, and no, fuck it, you can't stop it. You're going to get old and it's going to be a thing. But I mean,
yeah,
I'm always incredibly grateful for growing up the time that I did, because obviously, being in the era of VHS and popping those in and walking down the street thinking I was Zach Morris with a Walkman, and, and like, dating somebody called Kelly because of Kelly Kapowski and things like that, from Saved by the Bell. And, you know, what a time it was to be brought up in. And if you got a chance to watch this when you were a child, this was one of those movies that, you know, I think a movie like this really helps with imagination. It really helps with people thinking outside of the box. When you're a kid, when you get to watch movies like this, I think it opens up this world, this brain, where your brain can, like, the electrolytes in these brains can create worlds and imagination, because you're like, I've never seen like fucking clowns look like this going absolutely batshit crazy. And it's great. I think films like this is great for kids, and it's a great film for adults as well. Still,
yep, great for everybody. Watch it if you're into that kind of thing.
yeah, absolutely. One of the last things about the movie itself is your favourite scene in the movie, if you've got one, if you can remember. And I always like to know. It's interesting because I haven't spoken about my favourite scene in the movie. Purposely, and it'd be interesting to see if it's yours as well. So I'll let you go first. What's your favourite scene in the movie?
Okay, I already talked a little bit about it, but it's when the clowns go into like that store and they're exploring the shelves and looking at everything. They're spraying each other shaving cream. They're sneezing into the powder, and I think it's Rudy, not Rudy, Rudy, who that's in there with Shorty, and he brings like all that stuff up to the counter. That's then when the pharmacist is called, that cop's like, yeah, we've got a bit of a problem here. There's there's like clowns that are bring up a bunch of stuff, and they're secret. Yeah, they're not wanting to pay for it, but
yeah, exactly. And they're absolutely smashing the shit out of my shop.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about that scene. While it's also creepy because they killed the pharmacist at the end, it's also something a little bit endearing about it too. They're just like, it's like everything's just so strange and fascinating to them. It's just like a glimpse just into maybe just a part, like just a small part of what they're kind of like the good side, the curious side, and then it like all goes to crap like after that, because then they're just like 100% evil. But I don't know, it's just like that seems just very endearing just because
I suppose it's a very good like a scene that encapsulates the essence of what the entire movie is. Like that scene is very fun, but it has, once again, that dark element to it. Because they end up killing him and there's nothing they can do anyway.
Yeah.
But when I talk about, so my favourite scene leans heavily into the dark, and that's because, and it's funny because this was actually my favourite scene from even when I was a kid. And I think it's because I love it when movies take a complete left turn for like 2 minutes. And that's what this scene is. And it's the scene where you get the Mooney puppet scene. And what I mean by that is that Mooney is the name of the this disgruntled, the miserable cop, who, funny enough, earlier on in the movie actually says something like, "You won't use me as a puppet," or something like that, or I can't remember what he says. He says something like that anyway. But basically, within this scene, it is incredibly dark, and this scene is for me, like, this is the scene that makes it a horror movie. because this is a scene that it doesn't have any music, and basically what happens is that Dave ends up going back to this police station that isn't a police station, but it is apparently, with all these awful signs everywhere. And Mooney, this miserable cop, basically is sitting there, and Jumbo is behind him. And basically, he's using Mooney as a puppet. So he's got his hand sort of behind him here. You don't see it, but he's got it in him. And basically, he's basically put a puppet. I mean, hopefully not up his ass. Hopefully not. But he's put a puppet in him, and he's basically making Mooney talk, even though he's dead. But the way that they do that scene is completely different to any parts of the other movie, because that scene takes a very serious tone to it. The way they do it takes a very dark turn, and the way that they do the levels on Mooney's voice, where it's got his voice, but like almost a very sinister voice. Like if you listen to it, there's like an undertone of a very like deep voice underneath it as well. And there's no music in that bit as well, because that sometimes having no music really makes you sort of like more claustrophobic into what is sort of happening. And it's a proper horror scene, that. And even as a kid, that's always been my favourite scene, because obviously then he actually pulls his hand out of him, and then there's blood, and he goes and like wipes the blood off and flicks the blood off his hand and stuff. And that, to me, yes, it's not a fun part of the movie, like it's not fun like the rest, but for me, it's the other side of imagination. It's still imagination, it's still intuitive, it's just a different way of showing it. It might not be fun because it's incredibly dark, but it's a very clever part of the movie, because you took it to like a different place than where most of the movie had been. And they're like little bits in movies that I like, where this is such a fun movie, but in the, like, you know, halfway through it or 3/4 of the way through it, you've got an incredibly dark, really dark scene that, like, it's one of those scenes when kids are laughing their heads off watching it, and then when this scene comes on, they're completely quiet, and they're like, oh shit, is this where the film's going for the rest of it? I hope not, because they absolutely shit themselves. So yeah, that's my favourite scene in the movie. Basically the most dark scene of the movie, of an incredibly fun, goofy movie. That's my favourite scene in it.
Yeah,
so I think that, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really good scene. It's like, also, I consider it fun, and like maybe like I'm kind of twisted that way, but
Yeah.
it's a dark, twisted kind of way, because when that scene came up, I was just like, oh my god, he's using it as a puppet. This is so freaking awesome. Just, what does it about me? I don't know.
No, you're right. It's awesome, but I think, like I said, like with me, it's awesome because I'm like, oh, they went there, and that once again it becomes about anything goes, and that's one of the things I sort of miss about horror a lot of the times, is like it can be so formulaic, whereas in the 80s it was literally like anything goes. This is the money, do what you want. And anything goes. And obviously there's always going to be some things that end up on the cutting room floor. They take away certain things and say you can do this, you can't do that. But when they sort of like, you know, make movies like this, and they are what they are, that's when they're like such little gems that we still talk about and become absolute genuine cult classics. And it's such a good movie. It's such a fun movie. I could go and watch it again. I've watched it twice in the last 2 days, and I could go and watch it again tonight.
Yeah, do it.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I always do on the show is a segment called Your First Time. So that is where, and I will ask you, Brandy, as well for yours. So this gives you a little bit of time to think if you don't know, because sometimes people are like, actually, I can't remember my first. But I'm sure you'll be all right. Basically, this is where some amazing. I mean, they don't even have to be people that love horror. But this segment is where people send me over their first time horror movie memories that they can remember, and then I read it out on the show. So I've got one because it's quite long. But this one was sent from Pierce Fitzpatrick, which is probably pronounced completely wrong. They sent me this over on Twix. Which is what I call Twitter and X together. They sent it at Celtic Wolf's Bane. So that's where you can find them, at Celtic Wolf's Bane or Celtic Wolfbane, one of the other. They put I was only 12 years old and just noticed my father was watching a movie and I didn't know what it was. So I went into the room and asked what he was watching. Turns out it was A Nightmare on Elm Street. Granted, it was really late. I wanted to spend time with my dad. I took a look and saw the infamous finger glove knife, the hat, and the red and green sweater. My dad also asked for the first time, "I'm cracking a cold one. Do you fancy it?" And I was like, sure. So we sat down together to watch the whole film, and I was really intrigued by the genre. So we then sat through the movie, gently drinking our brewskis and eating junk food. It sounds like the best time ever. And that was the first time I was introduced to horror films. A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. So there we go.
What a good
Cool little memory.
Yeah.
That's it. And also, funny enough, A Nightmare on Elm Street, I think out of all of them, I mean, people will have to go back through the episodes because I'm not doing it. But I think that Nightmare on Elm Street is the one that's come up the most in people's first horror movie memories, which is interesting. But I mean, it goes to show once again, like we've spoken about the iconography of this movie. A Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the most iconic movies in the genre for a reason, and it started so many people on the journey. Can you remember your first time memory?
Oh boy, yes, I do. I think I was around 6 or 7, and my mom was like, "Okay, you have to stay upstairs because you're going to be I'm going to be watching a movie that you can't watch." And what's the first thing a kid does when they are told, like, don't?
Absolutely.
Like, something? I went and did it, so I snuck down the stairs and kind of sat, like, on the last, like, few bottom steps, and she was watching Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Oh, no.
So that's, like, so 6 or 7, just watching Hellraiser. Of course, that absolutely terrified the crap out of me. But interestingly enough, now that I think about it, I think that's the movie that kind of shaped my taste because I love really gory kind of horror, like slasher type movies, I think now because of that. And a part 2 of that is that my mom let me watch this, Tales from the Crypt, that show on HBO.
Oh, yes. Yeah. One of the greatest shows ever made, yeah.
Yes, I've got the box set. It's the show that got me to also showed me that horror could also be fun. Maybe that's part of why I like the goofy kind of 80s like horror stuff too, is because of Tales from the Crypt and the Crypt Keeper, voiced by the amazing John Sear. And so I had a really kind of first experience with horror and then a kind of fun experience with horror. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love that as well because that's such a prime example of why I love doing this segment and why horror is so important, because it's something that your first horror movie memory a lot of the time is something that either starts you on your journey or you're like, I hate this, I'm never watching horror ever again, and it puts people off completely. But I love hearing the first time memories like yours with Hellraiser because it didn't stop you. Like, you were so intrigued by that even though it was something that may have terrified you to your core, but you were like, but I need to see more and want to see more. And now you're sitting here and the vast amount of different horrors over your life and like my life and everybody's life that we've all seen, and we're still here on our individual journeys and our journeys together, enjoying a genre that's everlasting, always changing. And we always look back and we always remember the first horror movie memory, and we feel it, and it's in us. And but it's still fucked up that yours was Hellraiser because that's a dark movie. That's a dark one.
Yes, it was. I guess, like, even from a young age, I either like go big or go home.
Absolutely. You were like, yeah. That's like somebody like watching The Sadness as their first movie of all time of horror. And imagine, I feel sorry for that person if the first horror movie they ever see is The Sadness. God help that person, because they're going to think that the world is a horrible, horrible place.
But
Yes, God,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, it's just like I don't know, but yeah, it could have turned me off of horror forever, but it didn't,
Absolutely.
fortunately.
Absolutely, and that is the lure of everything that is the horror genre, and um, how we can't sort of keep away from it, or you can keep away from it and you never watch it, and you're like, I hate horror and stuff like that. But even those people, you can find a horror that they like, and then it plants the seeds within it, and then they're like, actually, I might like horror. And that's what's great about it. If you don't like it when you're a kid, you'll like it when you're an adult. I'm always convinced of it. I'm always convinced that there's always going to be a horror out there for someone or for everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and this film might not be for everyone, like we've both said. But if it is for you, then it's 100% for you, and you are all in on it, and you want to buy everything, and you want to be in it. You want that world, and you want to be part of it. Even though the clowns will probably kill you, you still want to be part of that world. And it's just such a joy to watch the imagination, the practical effects, the great direction. As I said, I think it's overlooked about the little moments in the movie and how well I actually think it is directed, and how easily this film could have been shit, and it's far from it. And still to this day, in 2024, we're still talking about it. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. I love it.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Well, Brandy, that's everything we've got to say about Killer Clowns from outer space. But now is your time. I want you to promote everything that you do with the Terrorific Lady, your YouTube, socials, everything. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, I run a little thing called Retro Horror School on YouTube, and it's basically where I talk about horror concepts, horror movies. I do deep dives into horror films from the 1970s to the 2010s. People have asked me, well, why those eras? Just why like so specific? It's like, well, it's the eras that I love. So it's the eras that I love and I know a lot of other people love. So why not just talk about it and teach about it? So that's that's a lot of what I do on YouTube. That is at the Terrorific Lady. It's like terror and then ific, so almost like terrific. Some reason they wouldn't let me take Terrorific Lady on YouTube. I have no idea why. So it's the
Unbelievable.
Terrorific Lady. Yeah, I have no idea why. It's weird. But then also, I do the same thing on Threads. It's at Terrorific Lady. And then also Instagram. So that's where you all will find me. If YouTube's not your thing, you can go to Instagram. If Instagram's not your thing, you can find me on Threads. So I do a lot of similar content on there on Instagram and Threads, but of course YouTube, that's where I can post a lot of the longer content. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. And what I love about your content is that it is very much in the vein of this movie. It's fun, and that's what we want. I love watching or listening to people when they're talking about things that they love, because you know you hear the passion in what you're talking about, and it could be something that you love, it could be something that you hate, but there's always going to be a reason, there's always going to be fun behind it. And that's what's great about your content. And sometimes, like I said, this genre, we get so crowded in the dark stuff and stuff like that, but having someone like yourself that is creating fun around the genre and talking about this genre, no matter what it is, but in just such a fun and enjoyable way. And the passion that you have for these movies show throughout your content. That's exciting, and for a horror fan, and I like that. So everyone, look, just make sure that wherever you are, wherever your Instagram, Threads, YouTube, make sure you're going to follow Brandy on everything she's doing over there. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channels, because I mean, look, YouTube's YouTube, and it ain't easy, and it's tough, and subscribing is free. It costs you nothing, but it helps us all in such a humongous, massive way. So just go and support Brandy and everything that she does, because, look, we've sat here and you can see the smile on our face when we're talking about a film like Killer Klowns from Outer Space, and you can go and enjoy the content that Brandy talks so honestly and passionately about on everything that she does as well. But in regards to the Let's Talk Horror channel, look, it's still here for now. It's still going for now. I'm still bringing out the content. Look, listen, subscribe to absolutely. You can go to obviously any of the socials, Instagram, Twix, TikTok, Threads. What's the other one? Slasher. We're on basically pretty much everything. We're on them. Just follow us on there. I'm bringing out content all the time. Instagram, I'm playing a little game every day where people can guess what I put up a picture, and you need to guess what movie it is from the picture. And if you get it, whoever gets it first gets a shout out on this as a story. It's a little bit of fun for the horror community. As well as that, we have the Saturday morning horror show that I do. So every Saturday morning, UK time, 9 a.m. in the morning, so nice and early. You can grab your cup of tea, your coffee, or whatever you bozos want to drink in the morning. You can drink whiskey or whatever you want to do. You can join me, and what I do is I go through the week's best horror news. Whatever I think is interesting to talk about, I'll go through it. That way you don't have to. I just do it all for you. And then we can have a good old general chit chat about horror. That, as I said, is 9 a.m. every Saturday on our YouTube. And the main thing is this, the podcast. You can listen to the podcast on audio platform on any of them. So if you prefer to listen to this episode or any of the other episodes, you can head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of them. You can listen to it, or you can just watch the video versions on YouTube. And as I said, please subscribe to everything that I do, that Brandy does. You are always going to be the biggest part in everything that we do. We love doing this,
yes,
but you play the biggest part in all of it. Watching it, listening to it, viewing it, subscribing, following, rating, reviewing. That's all on you. And the fact that you were also gracious to do that for us already means the world to us. If you haven't yet, well, you've only got yourself to bloody blame. So go and do it and go and help it. But I love the journey I'm on. I know Brandy enjoys and loves the journey that she's on. Yeah. It's been amazing talking to you about Killer Klowns from Outer Space, a movie that honestly I'm going to have to talk myself out of watching it, because I'm an old man and I need bed. But you know what?
Don't talk yourself out of it.
You know what? You'll probably get a message tomorrow saying, yeah, I watched it. But there we go. So, Brandy, thank you so much for coming on the Let's Talk Horror Channel podcast. Thank you for being, coming to the Creep Zone to have a good old chat with me about this amazing movie.
Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, I've been excited for months, and it got here faster than I thought. And yeah, I had a great time talking with you. Again, thank you for having me.
Awesome. That's it. Well, to everybody out there, if you're scared of clowns, stay away from this movie. If you like clowns and you see a clown in the street, maybe stay away from him, because you don't know if he's going to be from outer space with some sharp teeth, with a popcorn gun, and he might want to drink your blood. You never know. But do you know what? I'm not even scared of clowns. But I don't fucking trust them, and I blame this fucking movie. So there we go. So if you've never seen Killer Klowns from Outer Space, look, there's no excuse. Go and watch it. If you have, you know that how incredible it is. So go and watch it again. Go and enjoy it. But Killer Klowns from Outer Space, what a movie. And until next time, stay creepy, fuckers.